Let's do a little
4,
exercise.
1,
Element 115, essentially non-existent.
3, 4.
And he told police he was able to time travel because aliens filled his body with, you guessed it, alcohol.
Boys!
You know what I like on a really hot day?
What do you like on a really hot day, Mike?
A hot cup of soup.
Oh,
Yeah, like a
what
piping hot cup of soup. Like
fuck?
almost burning your mouth.
Okay. What kind of soup?
I don't know, not pea soup. I don't like anything like, as you know from the podcast, The Hold Up. I don't like anything with like a smushy consistency. Don't roll your eyes at your own shit, you son of a bitch. I don't like anything with like a smushy consistency. So just like, it doesn't matter. Just like a hot cup of soup. But the key is the hot on a hot day. Because then there's less like temperature jump. Right? Because if you're hot on the inside, the outside doesn't hurt as much.
I do not think that is a common opinion. I would say that is
I
not
do
a
not
common
like
opinion.
sweating and eating, and that just, to me, I'm sweating thinking about that.
I don't have any other option.
Well,
Oh,
I'm
it's like
gonna
sweat.
I'm gonna hijack this to take a moment to say that soup sucks. I hate soup.
All soup?
All soup except, all right, I like
Okay,
ramen
not all
noodles.
soup.
I like ramen noodles. That's about it.
Roms are good.
But other than that,
Would you
I don't like
consider
soup as a
yourself
meal.
well versed in soups?
I would consider myself mildly well versed in soups. In that,
Okay,
I've
so-
had a hell of a lot of Italian soups over my life, and I haven't liked a single one of them ever.
Wow.
And I hate it when they get served at the
Wow.
holidays because
Wow.
it's like there's a food that I don't like that's taking up valuable time in the courses, and we could just be eating food that's even better. So
That's a hot take.
that is a
Yeah,
very
that
hot
sounds
take.
more like an emotional family thing than
No,
like,
no,
the
it's
particulars
not.
of
It's
soup.
purely the fact that I just can't stand soup. However, I'm gonna throw a corkscrew into the mix. I love stews.
Ooh.
Oh.
Yeah, savory, thick stew. I'm into that.
Yeah, a nice
got
nice
that.
beef
Different.
or veal stew. Oh, with some bread, some Italian or French bread that dunk in the
Oh, it's all
juice.
crispy.
Oh, so good.
So what's the difference here? Viscosity?
I think so.
definitely.
I would assume.
A stew is thicker, right? And so
Yeah.
this brings me back to what Jarvis said, like just a couple minutes ago. You said that you do not consider soup. You don't like soup as a meal. I think
I don't
is what you
consider
said.
soup a meal, and whenever
So like with a sandwich or
yeah, it has to have a sandwich
Gotcha.
accompanying it for it to be a meal. But I wouldn't consider a bowl of soup a meal. Like I wouldn't
What
go
is
get
it
a
then?
bowl of soup unless it's ramen. But I always get dumplings with ramen, so I would consider that a full meal.
What is this soup to you then? Is it a snack?
It's a side.
It's like a warm up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's an appetizer.
It's an
Snack.
hors d'oeuvre, if you will.
yeah.
a snack. Oh yeah, hold on. I'm just gonna go get a quick snack. I'm gonna go get a bowl of soup. What the fuck, Mike?
The thing is, it's not
I'm
even a
try-
quick snack either because you gotta let it cool. You can't eat
Yeah.
it when
So
it's
I'm
red
trying-
hot.
Yeah.
I think
But I'm
that's
trying
so
to figure
funny.
out if it's not a meal, then what's the alternative? Is it a snack? It had to be a snack
an
then.
appetizer.
And then how? All right. How many sides equal a meal?
2 to 3.
Yeah. 2 to 3. A
I-
soup and a sandwich, that's a meal.
Depends
but a
on
soup
the
by
size.
itself is not a meal.
I don't know. I think you could have an infinite number of sides, and it still would not be a meal until you have like that main course dish to go with them.
Oh, an infinite number.
You could
Yeah, that
literally
sounds-
well put it this way. Like let's just say that you get like seasoned broccoli, a baked potato, rice, baked beans. Like
Meal.
that's not a
Meal.
meal. That's not.
Meal.
Those are a bunch of sides.
What the fuck?
It's not
So
a
you
meal.
could just sit there eating broccoli and fucking cauliflower and
Yeah.
beans
Rice and
and
you can
beans.
eat all that
day
you
long
want.
until you die, and then they'd be like, "Well, I don't know. He hasn't eaten a meal in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't know how he died
Doesn't
from
fly.
eating if he hasn't had a meal."
Well, no. See, now you get into
Doesn't
semantics. You still ate food. You just didn't have a meal.
So
You
what
didn't
would
have
make
you
that
didn't
a
have a
meal?
dinner. You know what I mean?
Do you need a solid protein for it to be a meal?
Beans.
It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be protein, but you need like.
So vegetarians
you
have
need like
never
that
had a
core
meal.
component. Well, no, vegetarians, they still have like that core component, whether it's like their tofu burger
Or
or
tempeh.
yeah, or whatever it is, right?
Tofu burger.
I don't know. I'm not a vegetarian. I don't eat that stuff. I don't even
So
know
a
what they
meal
eat.
is the nucleus that's surrounded by
sides.
orbiting sides and snacks.
Yeah,
and
that's all.
warm-ups
If you're
and-
gonna use the cell analogy, right? That's all your mitochondria and whatever the hell.
It's the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah, it is the powerhouse of the cell. Isn't that interesting that that's the one like cell fact that everybody knows?
It's because of memes.
Yeah,
It's a meme.
I know, but it's a meme
It's not
because
the only
of that.
I know that
though.
the nucleus is in the middle.
Well,
Okay.
well, yeah. Besides that, though,
Okay,
like-
so now if we're making a list,
no,
we've
but
got
like,
two
if
now.
I guarantee, if you went to anybody and said, "Tell me one thing about a cell," the first thing they're gonna say is the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Probably,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It gets
maybe
cold
they-
and lonely at night, especially when the guards have been treated.
Man, it's so cold in the D. Welcome, guys.
Yeah,
Welcome
we're
to
the
show.
Beastie Boys. No relation.
That was a
Good.
quite
That was
the
a
soup
solid cold open. That was
was.
good.
It was a hot open.
It was a hot.
Like
open.
the
It
hot
was because you
cup of
talked about
soup.
hot soup. Yeah. Did you have soup today, Mike?
Yeah, I had soup right before the show.
kind of soup.
What kind? Yeah.
It's chicken.
Chicken noodle or just chicken?
Yeah.
yeah.
Chicken. It was homemade with
Was it just chicken in hot water?
bone
like, you gotta be
broth.
specific.
bone broth and vegetables and diced chicken, all homemade.
Ooh, homemade? Nice. Fucking
Sounds
yeah.
good.
put 'em
Wow,
up.
and he's flipping us off. Wow,
Yeah.
and Jarvis is flipping us off. Oh my god,
Full
Mitch.
of, full of energy today, right?
You guys are all number
pretty
one. I'm
wild.
very excited.
Now,
See,
did you
I
get
don't,
it as a snack
I don't
or as a
flip people
meal?
off because I'm a
That was a
gentleman.
meal. That's the last meal that I'm going to have today, but apparently I haven't eaten since breakfast, according to you, fuck jocks.
Wow, well, I'm getting lumped in again here, and I'm not.
You're just in the group. Enjoy it. Ride the wave, baby.
I hate it. I hate everything.
Excuse me. I'm very
Jarvis,
excited.
you just ate. What did you have?
I had
Oh,
a
Mike
veggie
was excited
burger,
about
actually.
something. Sorry.
Going to vegetarian.
Oh,
I
a
had
veggie burger. Snap.
Yeah,
Fuck you,
dude.
bitch. Yeah, dude.
Kira
Are you-
made amazing veggie burgers last night. So
Nice.
You going
Drop that.
vegetarian?
what's that?
You going vegetarian?
She's a vegetarian. I still occasionally have meat, but for the most part, she cooks all vegetarian meals, and she does a very
Mi-
good job at it. She's a very good cook.
Mrs. Holmes also a vegetarian for the entirety that I've known her. Yet she will still help prepare a delicious chicken soup for me.
Yeah, Kira
That's
made she made fried rice last night, vegetarian fried rice, but then she was like, screw it, I'll throw some ham in for you. So she put a little bit of ham in.
It's good.
Ooh, nice.
Good relationship.
Yeah, it was delicious.
Give and take.
Yep, damn right.
Wow.
Hell yeah.
Strong. You know, we had a little fun, and now we're talking about some heartwarming moments with our loved ones.
So
And,
let's
I
get
mean-
into missing loved ones, because that's this
Okay.
week's show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, I have little to no idea what we are talking about. I saw a movie poster, and that is it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
tried to do research, but Mike and Mitch
I'm
both
telling you
held a
not
gun
to.
to my head and told me
Yeah,
don't
well,
need to
you're
do
not
any
supposed to.
research.
It's part of the show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they physically and mentally assaulted me, telling me not to
Wow.
do research for this. So
Not emotionally, though.
All right, hold on. I draw the line at physically assaulting you because that could get me into some legal trouble. So you have to say allegedly when you say that.
allegedly,
Okay, I allegedly
assaulted.
physically assaulted you about it.
Allegedly.
but mentally, you guys fucked me up.
Oh,
Like,
for
I'm
sure. I don't
PTSD
deny
now
that
from
one
this.
bit. I
No
bodied
body,
you
no
in the
crime.
corner mentally, but
Nobody, no crime.
Nice.
Oh.
Good little
All
Bob
right.
Marley reference. Nice.
So,
yes,
where did we start
missing
here?
411.
So
Is that what it's
yeah,
called?
we started
Yeah.
out, yes. So that is the umbrella with which these missing persons cases are encompassed.
Yes.
And I'll tell this is, first of all, I have been into conspiracy theories, science fiction, like all these kinds of like alternate reality, optional stories, like adventures that the average person could go on, whether they be frightening and end in death or just exciting and end in Disney credits.
Okay.
You don't know.
yeah.
I've been way into this. And there are a few like tentpole stories that I've really liked and I think brought me the most personal I don't want to say joy because this is such a dark thing, but has been the most intellectually exciting for my perception of reality or what I think to be reality. And this, in the recent history, is the most and continues to be like super intriguing. And I think it's only like the very surface area of possibility has been scratched off.
Yes.
And so the basic story, if you might let me get into it, this is my interpretation of this dude's work. So there's this guy, David Paulides, and he used to be a police officer. He was a police detective for like 20 years or whatever.
20 years.
I think he's retired.
He was also
retired. He's on a pension.
Yep, he was a member of SWAT first, and then he got into police detective work, and he was a police detective for 20 years.
So I think when he was very young, he was on a camping trip, maybe with his father, his grandfather, and they had an experience in the woods. And that kind of piqued his interest into Bigfoot stuff, which we all can appreciate.
Yeah.
So he had kind of maintained that interest through his career in law enforcement, and he was getting back into it. I think he wrote a couple books on Bigfoot
so
research.
he retires from law enforcement in 2011, and then he writes 2 books on Bigfoot. One's called The Tribal Bigfoot, and then I'm blanking on the other one, but it's about Bigfoot specifically in California.
Okay.
So that's what he's into.
Yeah.
And he's at this national park, and I think he was doing something related to Bigfoot, looking into it more.
Yep.
And then the story goes that there were park rangers that had kind of heard that he was there, or maybe the whispers going around, hey, there's this detective in the park, and he's asking questions. So the story that David Paulides tells is he was staying at a nearby like motel or hotel. He says there's only a couple places nearby this park he was at that people from out of town would stay if they weren't camping. He was staying at one of these places. The park rangers, the day he was at the park, waited till their shift was done, and then a couple dudes show up at this guy's hotel. And they were like, hey, listen, I know you were asking some stuff. We didn't want to talk to you at the park, but if you wouldn't mind, we'd like to talk to you now because some strange stuff has been going on, and we feel like you're the first person in here that's maybe legitimate and would want to hear about it. So the story that gets conveyed to David Paulides, and this is, I'm again 5 people removed at this point. But the park ranger starts telling him a lot of strange stuff has been happening in these parks, especially in the case of missing people. And one of the weird things for us is that for the first week to maybe 10 days, there'll be a lot of attention when someone goes missing. You have search and rescue, you have family coming out, you have people concerned. But then after that, at a certain point of time, whatever that arbitrary number is, things kind of die down, but that person's still missing. So I want to pose a question to you guys, because I've been thinking about this a lot in context of telling you. What would be, again, hypothetical completely, what is your number if, like, Jarvis, in your case, you have a significant other, if she went missing, she was out hiking with some friends, she goes missing, what do you think the number would be for you to stop looking for her? Right? You don't even need to answer that. It's just the idea of it.
Yeah.
Right? There's like an arbitrary number. So you have a case of search and rescue. You have so many people from the town. Somebody has to pay for it on some level. There's a lot of volunteers. But you, if you're looking for someone who's missing, have to suspend your life as you know it, any kind of searching for income to pay your own bills, to maintain your own health and sanity and well-being, to look for someone else. So there's a number there. It's different for everybody. If you don't know anybody and you're just helping 100 other people look in the woods for somebody, you're not going to be as driven as someone who's looking for their significant other. So there's all these little like natural human checkpoints in place. But what the park ranger was saying is he saw some level of consistency in that maybe a week to 10 days, everyone will be together and working on it. But after that point, it's just kind of, oh, well, and then they move on. And then there's a lot of cases he was saying that like things just didn't add up because national park, people go missing all the time. But this sparked David Paulides' interest. So he took it upon himself to start looking into it more. And what happened is after X amount of years go by between that first meeting and now, the dude has accumulated like 4 or 5 books worth of missing persons cases. And the way that he's done it is he's followed certain like self-appointed criteria for these missing persons, because a lot of people go missing. So first he has to rule out that it wasn't suicidal, right? So if anybody had shown any inclination in the past of like self-harm, or if they were maybe like mentally imbalanced to a certain degree, that gets dismissed. Right? Because that person doesn't want to be found. And then as he was looking through cases, specifically starting with national parks, he started to see a lot of weird correlations. What are you?
The correlations.
Correlations. Between these missing people. So in the case of especially a lot of kids, but what would happen was someone would go missing, then their body would be found in an area either miles away, impossible for them to traverse, whether it be conditions, age, or the person themselves, in a certain period of time, or in a lot of cases the body is found in a place that had been previously searched, maybe even several times.
So Mike, I have on my notes here a list of some of the key points of his victim profile, if you want me to share them.
Hell yeah, baby.
All right. So people usually go missing in national parks, especially near bodies of water, boulder fields, or patches of berries or other wild fruits or vegetables. After people go missing, bad weather tends to follow. Stuff like rainstorms, snowfall, windstorms, thick mist and fog. Now, both high-functioning people, as far as like doctors, scientists, people like that, alongside people with disabilities, are among the most likely to go missing in these cases. And also, people on both ends of the spectrum concerning physical health are most likely to be missing in these cases too, such as those in peak physical health and athletes, as well as people who are handicapped or in poor physical health. Now, seasoned outdoorsmen and novices are also equally likely to go missing. So if a person is found alive, which is pretty rare, they usually have memory loss of the event. In the case of children specifically, children have a tendency to tell bizarre stories, which include rescue and protection by an animal, commonly a predator such as a bear or a wolf. If the person's found deceased, which is more likely, the cause of death is never determined or is highly suspect, and usually death from exposure is given as the explanation by the coroner simply due to the lack of there's no better lead. Now, the missing...
So, one of the things he likes to say is local reports for local consumption. And then I think this is one of the things that maybe prompted that ranger to talk to him in the first place. It's because, like I was saying, 7 to 10 days, and then, you go back to things as normal, and then that person just gets listed as missing. But police agencies and a lot of people looking into this, especially the open public, you get a letter you see an article headline in the newspaper that like this girl has gone missing. That's like a fucked up thing, and you want to see that person, it's your natural inclination to see that person brought home. But when there's no resolution, I think unfortunately what seems to happen is there's like a natural inclination for local law enforcement to just leave something there, right? You don't want to have just an open I don't know. So you'd kind of make up the most likely answer to that question, even if it's not reflective of the investigation at all. They'll be like, oh, that person died of exposure, because it's an easy answer, and then everyone can move on with their life. Yet that's an unresolved missing persons case. And that's what he's found and filled all these books with.
We need closure as humans.
Yes. Did I freeze? Am I good?
No, you're good.
Okay.
No,
You're good.
Okay, I thought I froze for a sec. So just to finish up here. So missing people, when they are found, whether they're alive or dead, they have a tendency to be very long distances from the point they went missing. That would be near impossible to cross on foot. So some examples include a skier who got lost and then was found alive in a completely different state on like the other end of the country than the one he disappeared in. And
Are you
then
talking about Jonathan Miles Robinson?
I believe so, yes. And then you also have cases of like children who either remains of them are found or they are found after like climbing up 2,000 miles of rough terrain and elevation up a mountain, right? Stuff that would simply be near impossible or impossible for someone to do, especially in very rough and treacherous terrain. So the missing are often found in areas that have been previously searched by search and rescue, like Mike said. And a lot of times, these are areas that are thoroughly searched. And sometimes it genuinely seems as if the missing person is placed in these locations intentionally after a length of time after they were searched. Because they'll find people just in like directly on the trail that had been searched tons and tons of times. And it's like, how would nobody notice that, you know? And then victims, while missing for a length of time, they usually only pass away days or even hours before they're discovered, with very little context of what occurred while they were missing. Articles of clothing, especially footwear, will go missing or will be found great distances away with little to no wear or tear on them. Search dogs are unable to pick up or follow a scent, and if there's tracks of the person, if those are found, they have a tendency to just randomly stop as if like the person vanished into thin air. And then lastly, and most importantly, which is like the linchpin of a lot of this stuff, is that there seems to be evidence that search and rescue, park services, the FBI, and other agencies are either withholding information from the public or they grievously and perhaps even intentionally mishandle information during these investigations. So that's like the missing 411 case profile in a nutshell.
So he started accumulating all these cases. And in his initial, once he first talked to the park ranger, he went to, I want to say it was Yosemite, but it was somewhere in the National Park Service. And he reached out to them. And he's like, hey, you know, I used to be a detective. I'm an author now. I'm looking for a list of all your missing people for this park for, let's say he designated a time period, even if he didn't. So he starts getting jerked around by the people at the Park Service, eventually getting to the point where someone tells him, we don't keep that information. And he's like, what do you mean you don't keep the information? And they're like, well, we rely on the institutional memory of our employees. And he's like, that it didn't make any sense. So he starts filing freedom of information requests, right? He's trying to figure it out. And he gets some return call from some weird guy who's like almost presents himself as a lawyer or something, and he's just like, what do you want this report for? It was like a particular missing persons case. And the guy, and Paulides is like, well, I'm an author, I'm looking into it, I'm accumulating all these missing cases for a book on missing people. And the guy was like, you're not going to get it. He's like, what do you mean I'm not going to get it? And he's just like, we're not giving you that report, that missing person report. You can't have it. And he's like, is there an open investigation? The guy's like, no, you just can't have it. So David Paulides is familiar with the protocol that you're supposed to go through, especially as a government agency. And he's encountering all these weird things. Like, he ultimately, after requesting so many times for a missing persons list, I think it was from Yosemite, but I'm not entirely sure, they got back to him and like, we don't have it, but if you want to pay for it, we'll have someone put all this stuff together for you. For that park, it's going to cost you $34,000.
Oh, wow.
As an individual, they're expecting him to pay to hire someone to put all this information together. And he's just like, okay, well, for shits and giggles, how much for all the national parks? And they were like 1.4 million, I think. So they want him to pay them to do the work that they should have been doing to begin with.
Yeah.
Now,
Is this a cover-up?
easiest...
Sounds to me like a cover-up.
Well, the easiest explanation, right? The upper surface level explain away would be Mitch's razor.
Yeah.
Right? In that the national park is a revenue generating resource. And if you start broadcasting information of weird goings on, that might hurt the
ability to
attendance.
generate revenue. Yeah.
So it's like if people started going missing in Disney World, they're not going to start publicizing that. They're going to do everything they can to downplay it. Now, if it's just as easy as being like, oops, lost the file, or something gets put at the bottom of a list, that's fine.
Well, I've
But
always
once
heard if
he's
you go missing at Disney World, you just come back as a Small World character. They just add you into the ride.
Yeah. They put
That's
people
100% accurate, by the way.
That's how I want to go.
They put people in the animatronics at Disney.
Yes, you become an animatronic.
Yeah.
It's your body and everything, but they take all your insides.
Yeah.
The Hall of Presidents is filled with blood.
Yes.
All right, so he starts looking into this more and more as he starts accumulating. So he's the one that puts together all of the criteria that Mitch listed out.
Yep.
Like, so your first explanation, Yosemite Park, maybe a bear ate some hiker, right? The hiker was picking huckleberries or whatever, and this bear comes up and eats them.
Yep.
Well, if there's any signs of animal predation, that gets removed from his list.
Yep.
And he starts to see these, what he calls clusters of missing people, all these missing persons cases that fit his list of criteria that don't make any sense whatsoever. So now to get into some of the specifics, and what he found out is he seems to be the first person to put this together, or at least the first person at this level to present this information that there's definitely weird stuff going on. There are people that are aware of it, but no one's really saying anything to anybody else about it. So like Mitch was saying, in the case of children, and one thing you have to remember about kids is they're one of the best resources in this group for people that have been found and then have kind of given a statement. But unfortunately, a child's perception is limited.
Yeah.
But there is that commonality, like the so in Walhalla, Michigan, in 1869, in his research, he found there was this 2-year-old named Katie Flynn who went missing. Search the next day jumped. The next day, they found her by the river, I think. So someone had reported that like a huge fur-covered creature, and someone referred to a bear, jumped into the river and vanished on the other side. Katie was found by the river. She told her father she had been playing with a big dog/wolf. It walked up to her, held out its paw, she took it, and the two walked off into the woods. And she said the dog left her for a while, then returned with berries, which they shared, after he held them out for her to take. The creature then scraped up leaves around her, and then finally the big dog lay down next to her and covered her with his body to keep her warm overnight. So this is the child's, this 2-year-old that was missing and then found's interpretation of what happened to her. And I don't know, or I haven't heard anything like even trained bears that would go get food, bring them back, present the food. Right? Or even dogs to a degree. Like if it's a bear or a dog, they're not using their paws to communicate like that.
No,
right?
not like hands.
But it's just,
They're not using them to present.
It's just
things or,
weird.
Like,
And this goes back that far. So this is 1869. So, you know, it's like the
and
immediate
stories like
sexy.
this. Yeah. I was just going to say, stories like that still happen to this day. Not that long ago, there was a case of a kid who went missing. I want to say it was like in the Midwest somewhere, I believe. Or no, it was North Carolina. He went missing for like 3 days. They eventually find him, right? And according to him, he met a friendly bear who took care of him for 3 days.
Yeah, this was in the past couple of years, right? 2019 maybe?
Yep.
Or 2018?
Yeah, 2019, 2018. Mike knows exactly what I'm talking about. So this is like
a picnic basket.
Imagine. Hey, boo boo, looks like we got a new friend.
Got a picnic basket.
So yeah, this is it's not like an isolated thing that like happened in the 1800s. Like this is regularly recurring phenomena that children report when they go missing.
So, are
wild.
there caretaker bears out there? It's unlikely, but it's
Bear-takers?
possible. Bear takers.
Of course.
I think those are poachers. So, I was listening to a bunch of interviews with him recently, and he brought up that I couldn't find the specifics on this, but it was also very interesting. He said that he believes it was Arizona. There were 3 missing kids that disappeared from a picnic ground, right? Their family's going crazy looking for them. When eventually search and rescues runs into them after a day and a half, like looking through the nearby woods, these kids duck and hide from search and rescue. And when search and rescue get over to them and like, what's going on, boys? Why did you just crouch down behind that rock or whatever? They were like, we thought you might be the ape people again.
Wow.
Right? Very, very interesting. So that's the little like something's off, right?
Yeah,
so these he dismisses the people that wanted to go missing.
Yep.
You dismiss the people that are likely picked up, whether it's like human trafficking or like drug deal gone wrong or
kidnapping.
people just trying to He does his best to push all that stuff out of the way, and then when he starts looking at the remaining, like these weird little things pop up that like, how do you explain that, right? And like,
Right.
like what does 8 people, dog, men, like what could that mean? Now, I've been into this a lot since I found out about it. And I've gone down every single rabbit hole I can find. And one of the interesting things that can't explain all this, but this could be a lot of different things working near each other in tandem or just parallel. Something that is a possibility that could explain some of these cases are offshoot, I don't want to say civilization, but offshoot groups, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a guy like me, you're done with society, you decide you're going to a national park and you're going to move and live off the land, and you kind of get into that wild, like feral almost lifestyle.
Backwoods.
If you're
sorta,
covered in enough like crap and hair, you might look like a dog or a wolf or a bear to someone that doesn't know any better or is shocked or is fearful. And then if you've been living for 20, 30 years on your own barefoot in a park, it might be real easy for you to sneak up on someone and ghost them right into the woods, right?
Absolutely.
You'd steal a kid for a few days, drop them off after you find out people are looking at them, like to break their neck because they're petting the rabbits like of mice and men.
Yeah.
But you don't know, like this is one of the possible, and then if a kid does live, here you are, this fur-covered man thing that gave the kid berries, that maybe the interpretation is, oh, this bear kept me safe for the night. Like that's possible. It doesn't explain everything though.
Yeah. There's
And that's
still a
one of
lot
the-
of holes in that theory.
Yeah, sure. And there's no way that it can explain all the cases.
Exactly.
And then one thing in Paulides' investigation of all this, another common factor was the FBI would show up on a lot of missing persons cases in the parks that have no real reason or explanation as to why they would be interested. There were a couple cases, one I think more recently in Canada and then one in the United States, where allegedly elite military units had been deployed in a park searching for someone that they really shouldn't have had anything to do with.
Yep.
So what's the interest coming from the government, the federal agents? Like why? And he hasn't found an answer for that. He did find out that, and I don't have the name here, but he found out that one of the agents that he was kind of following, so when he would go investigate a missing persons case, he would find out that there had been a federal agent there at the time. And then he kind of like got to know that this guy had been looking into it. And then in a conversation with someone years later, he was like, hey, do you ever know what happened to Agent so-and-so? He was like, no. He's like, he killed himself.
Yep.
So just a weird connection to all this.
Guy.
The federal agent that had been assigned to investigate the missing people's cases that Paulides is looking into ended up offing himself in a hotel room.
Yep,
Could
that was
be
yeah.
unrelated, but very interesting that would happen.
That was the guy who was overlooking the missing persons cases in the Great Smokies National Park. So the famous one from that park is the Dennis Martin case, which I want to talk about today, but we're going to finish this first, and then we'll get into that. But that was the same FBI agent who eventually committed suicide, and he worked, I think, something like 20 different cases over the course of like a 10 or 15 year period just in that national park of missing persons cases.
So something's going on.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what it is. One of my favorite things about Paulides is, even though he is a Bigfoot guy through the entire, almost decade now, I think he's been doing this particular research, he refuses to even speculate as to what could be causing this.
Yep.
He thinks that the cases speak for themselves as best they can and are so important to look like that the mere suggestion of anything paranormal would ruin the credibility in this case. He's like,
Yeah.
I don't even want to go near it. So he's gotten like people angry at him because he refuses to even like comment on it in that way. He's like, sure, you could believe whatever, it could be aliens, a UFO coming down would explain this and this, but it doesn't explain this, this, and this. Bigfoot would explain this, but how is Bigfoot taking able-bodied college students out of a city and disappearing them for 6 days? There's a lot going on here, and I think his refusal after all this time, because, he could get way more out of it personally if he was to go hard and be like, Bigfoot's doing all this. But because he doesn't, it makes it that much more interesting. So you want to get into some particular cases? Now that you guys have the overview?
I'd love to, yeah. This is wild.
The one I want to
Martin
start,
first?
That's the one I want to start with because that was my first introduction to this whole topic, and also, Paulides has said many times that this is the case that disturbs him the most. So,
let's hear it.
If you don't mind, Mike, I'd like to take the lead.
Hell yeah.
Okay. So, it's June 14th, 1969. The Martin family.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
It was a good year, The Martin family, so it consists of William Martin, who's the father in this instance, William Martin's father, and his two sons, one of whom is his 6-year-old son, Dennis. They are going camping for Father's Day weekend in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So they go and the first day they hike out to a location and they end up camping out in a place called Spence Field, which is a pretty non-threatening, fairly flat, grassland type clearing. It's a very well frequented campground within the park, very safe. So that day that they're camping in Spence Field, the Martin family gets joined by another family. And this family, who they've never met before, also have the last name of Martin. And they also have a son. So they didn't know each other before that day, but they, they become friendly. They let their kids play together, right? So the children, they decide to play a game of hide and seek. And Mr. Martin, his father, and the other Mr. Martin all witness Dennis, the 6-year-old boy, go hide underneath a nearby bush at the tree line. So about 5 minutes pass, and it kind of occurs to Mr. Martin that it's been a while since he's seen his son. And he goes and investigates the bush, only to discover that Dennis is not there. And none of the children or the other Mr. Martins had seen him move from that spot. Nobody has seen him. So naturally, being a dad, you get concerned, right? So he begins searching for his son. He runs 2 miles down a trail, and he only gives up when he gets to a point where he's like, there's no absolute way my 6-year-old son could have come this far in double the amount of time that it took me, right? Which is a fair assessment. So after about traveling for that 2 miles, finds no trace. He decides to call park services, and they mount a search and rescue. So while Spence Field is very safe, the area around it is fairly treacherous because this is a mountain range. So there are a lot of opportunities for someone to get lost, to fall. There's a lot of steep ravines. There's a lot of cliffs. Animals to the area can be pretty dangerous. Black bears, wild boar, bobcats, and copperhead snakes are some of the most noteworthy fauna that you can encounter that would be dangerous. So the search for Dennis occurs over a period of about 2 weeks. It consisted of 1,400 volunteers alongside search and rescue. Now here's where it gets a little weird. By the third day, the FBI become involved with the case. Now that's not like super unusual for a missing persons case. However, the fact that like they're interested in it kind of indicates that they suspect something else might have gone on than just a child who got lost due to wandering in the woods, right? The National Guard show up. They mount their own separate search and rescue as well. Now, the initial search, like the day he goes missing, about an hour after he's missing, heavy rain starts. And then the entire day after is followed by a very thick mist. Now, where it gets super weird is after the first week, a detachment of Green Berets show up, and they mount their own independent search of what's going on. They're using their own private radio channels, and they have little to no interaction with anybody else involved. They don't want to work with the FBI. They don't want to work with park services. They don't want to work with the National Guard. They're working completely on their own. And when Paulides interviews Mr. Martin years later after this, Mr. Martin attests that it seemed like none of the government parties seemed to want to like work with each other at all. So like the FBI, Special Forces, National Guard, Park Services, none of them were like really working with each other. He said it almost seemed like they were competing with each other in a way, like withholding information from each other and stuff like that. So now,
are you looking for my kid? Like,
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what the fuck, guys? You know? I mean, I'm not a father, but if I was, I'd be fucking livid, right? So, now, simultaneously, during the time that Dennis initially went missing, so we're rewinding time back to the first day, Dennis is missing. This is about maybe an hour and a half after he was after he was last seen. There's another family. They're known as the Key family. And they're hiking in nearby Rowan's Creek, which is approximately 5 miles away from Spence Field, right? They asked the park ranger that day where they could go to take their son to see a bear, and he directed them to this location. So they're at Rowan's Creek, and the family here, what Mr. Keyes describes as the most sickening, loudest, bellowing scream he has ever heard in his life. And his son is with him, and he says, "Hey, Dad, look on the hill. There's a bear on the hill." So he looks up to the ridgeline, and what he's seeing, he said it's not a bear. He's described it as it's a man covered in hair, or what he assumed might be like a fur coat or an animal pelt. Whatever it is, it's big, it's shaggy, it's hairy. It's moving along the ridgeline, trying to stay out of sight, and it appeared to be carrying something over its shoulder. Now, the Key family, they're not aware that Dennis Martin is missing. So, they just kind of go through the thing like, well, that was weird, right? And then they leave. So it's not until like the following days that Mr. Key learns from the news that there's a kid missing, right? And then he's kind of like
off-site, right?
What was that?
They were staying off-site, and then they saw the news report?
Yup. So they see a news report. In fact, I think he read it in the newspaper, like 2 or 3 days after Dennis had already been missing. And he's kind of figuring, well, I'm at Rowan's Creek. Time is roughly around the same time, not too far from where he was last seen. I might have seen, you know, for all I know, what I saw was like a criminal who like abducted this kid, right? It could be like a moonshiner or something who was wearing like a fur coat, you know? So he figures he has a lead. He contacts the FBI and he's like, hey, I saw this. I saw something that might be of interest to you. I can take you to exactly where I saw it. I can show you where I saw it. And the FBI refuses. And they say, no. You stay there. We'll send someone to you. Which is a little weird because, like, if you're doing any type of detective work or trying to solve any type of mystery, right? You would, number one, you want as many leads as possible, right? Even if it's one that's probably false, at least you can rule it out, right? But also, you would want to be at the location with the witness to, like, hear their story and see what they have to say, right? So instead, the FBI, they send an agent and a representative from Park Services to go meet Mr. Key outside of the park, and they take his statement. Now, the Key family sighting was never reported to Mr. Martin by the FBI. In fact, in the official case file for Park Services, which Paulides was able to look at, the Key family sighting is not even documented. So Mr. Martin ends up finding about the Key sighting many days later in the newspaper. In a strange twist of irony, how the Key family found out that there's a kid missing, he later finds out that, hey, there's a lead out there that's not being told to me from the newspaper. So, when asked by Mr. Martin why he was never told by the FBI about the sighting, the FBI responds that, well, it's irrelevant. They say that the distance between where Dennis disappeared and the sighting was far too great. It occurred only an hour or two apart. It's likely not of any relevance. There's no way that it would, there's no way your 6-year-old son could have gotten that far, right? So Mr. Martin's like, well, hold on now. That sounds a little bullshit, because Mr. Martin was sort of an outdoorsy guy. He was former military. So he and another park ranger by the name of Dwight McCarter, he's one of the park rangers working this case, and he's like really the one that Mr. Martin trusts the most. They were able to get from the location of where Dennis was last seen to where the Key family had their sighting in about an hour and a half, just by walking, right? Not even like sprinting or running. So the FBI agent who was working this case is the same one that Mike mentioned earlier. He committed suicide. I don't have his name. I couldn't track it down, but he killed himself, and he worked on a number of missing persons cases in this national park. Now, years later, David Paulides interviews Mr. Martin, and it's a tough interview for him to get because the Martins promised themselves that we're not going to talk about our son anymore. This has ruined our lives. But he manages.
It's unresolved trauma.
Yep, exactly. But he manages to get Mr. Martin to talk, and Mr. Martin says that he believes that the Key's sighting was sort of the proverbial key to his son's disappearance. And he kind of insinuates to Paulides that whatever the Key family had seen, whether it was a man or something else, abducted his son. And he also felt that the FBI was particularly negligent in not following up on that lead, and maybe were even a little malicious in a possible attempt to cover something up. So then, in another interview with Dwight McCarter, who's the park ranger that was working closely with Mr. Martin, he tells Paulides that a group of backwoods people, or wild men, inhabited the Great Smokies at the time, and Park Services had had a few encounters with them prior, including one ranger who was almost killed by one. So this was before park rangers were allowed to be armed or had the arresting powers that police forces have. So Mr. Carter believes that one of the backwoods feral people took Dennis. Now, there's all tons of other theories about this, of what could have happened to this kid, right? So you got more natural explanations, which are kind of like the more official explanations, which is death from exposure, or that he must have fell into a ravine. In fact, a guy looking for ginseng in the 80s found a shoe which is believed to probably have been Dennis's shoe. So,
Wow.
another potential explanation is that, you know, a wild animal such as a bear or a boar or a big cat had gotten Dennis, which is, you know, not out of the realm of possibility, but there's no evidence for it, but there's technically no evidence against it, right? It's also been posited that there might be serial killers who utilize the isolation of natural parks to prey upon victims, and Dennis might have been a victim to one. Now, as for what the Key family saw, it is still a complete mystery whether it could have been the culprit, but a lot of people really have the feeling that that's the linchpin of the case. That's part of the reason, or the reason, that the Green Berets were fucking sent in. Whether it was, a clan of backwoods feral people, or whether it was like a fucking Bigfoot, who knows what it was, but people think that had to have been the reason. That, like, something was going on that made them say, all right, we gotta call in special forces to deal with this. Even if we can't recover the child, we gotta make sure this doesn't happen again, right?
Yeah,
So
I could believe there being feral people living out in those woods, considering how isolated they are, and even if you look at
100%.
those
Yeah.
tribes in the Amazon that no one has any contact with.
yeah, there's still
I can believe they could be
unencountered tribes to this day.
Yeah. I could totally believe there'd be a group of people in there, especially if, like, somebody like the Green Berets are getting involved. Those are our elite soldiers. Like, why would they need to get involved if they weren't?
Yeah, why are they looking for a missing 6-year-old
Human.
boy? Like,
Yeah.
you know? Like, something else has to be going on. Like, that's just not... Like, put it this way, if I went missing, the Green Berets aren't going to show up and look for me. Like...
I would, though.
Oh, well, thank you,
I
Travis.
put on a Green Beret and I would look for you.
Well, that makes me
Because I
feel
love
better.
you so much, Mitch.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah,
I
we
got
just need
you.
to start training now. If we just start training to be Green Berets now, then any one of us goes missing, we're in good shape.
Yeah.
I'd rather just buy the berets.
Still young enough,
That's
right?
step one. Yeah, of course.
Buy the Green Berets.
Well, when you
So-
join the Green Berets, do you get your beret first, or do you have to, like, actually go through all the
You
training?
gotta earn it.
Yeah,
You
you
gotta
gotta
earn
earn
Yeah,
it.
you have to earn
gotta
it.
do the
Oh.
training.
It's like it's
You
kind
get-
of like
you-
a black belt, but it's just a green beret.
Exactly.
You start with a raspberry beret.
You have to learn Raspberry Beret in your first 2 weeks of training.
Oh,
Learn the
okay,
song
yeah.
front to back.
But so the missing shoe is another commonality, especially
Yep.
with younger kids. Clothes will be found and folded.
Yep.
Or
Or
and then
neat.
Like neatly
another
folded,
thing-
or- Weird.
Yeah, or turned inside out.
Yep.
And also, a lot of times, children or even adults, occasionally too, will be found a distance that they could not have possibly traveled. And then in the case without shoes, their feet or their socks won't be dirty or damaged. So now you have this barefoot kid that was found miles from where, in the middle of a creek, right, surrounded by water, and their shoes and socks won't be wet and they won't be marked up. So how did that kid get there?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, in that particular case, it's like maybe a group of wild people, and that would explain it. But in a case like, real quick, Eric Lewis in 2010, this is in Mount Rainier. He's a 57-year-old career rock climber, right? Mm-hmm. He's on the side of Mount Rainier. There are people up top, I guess, on belay or holding the rope or whatever. And they said that the line just goes loose. And they pull it up. There's a carabiner, but there's no rope attached. Eric still missing. No scream, no body. He's on the side of this mountain, populated park. The line goes loose, and he is gone. Right? Still not found. How did a wild man do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm assuming they probably checked the bottom of the cliffside, right? And he's
Yeah,
like,
man. Or you'd usually hear like, "Fuh," you know?
Yeah.
Or did he get sucked into the side of the cliff face?
Yeah.
Well, there's a possibility, right? If there's
I'm
some,
looking at
if there was
this
like
guy
a,
now. He looks a
false-
lot like Josh Brolin, this Eric Lewis.
maybe
Huh.
he just went back to his filmmaking career. My favorite story, and again, these are all really tragic for the most part, and not to put down these like actual people affected by
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
But the story that got me, that hooked me line and sinker, has kept my interest, was, I think you mentioned it before, Steve Kubacki
Yep.
from 1978. So this was in February. Steve Kubaki's a student. I think he's in his 20s. He either late teens, early 20s. He goes skiing in Michigan, and he doesn't come back. So he's like, bye, everybody, I'm going skiing. And this happened in what's known as the Michigan Triangle, as all good locations have weird triangles of
Of course.
high strangeness.
Yeah.
So the next day after he doesn't come back, they start searching. They find his backpack and his skis near a beach on Lake Michigan. Now, this is February, so everything's pretty much snowed over. That's why he's out skiing. The lake itself is covered in ice, a bunch of it. They find footprints that they guess are his near the backpack and his skis, leading out to the frozen lake and then just stopping. So they're looking at this evidence and they assume homeboy just walked out into the lake for whatever reason. Maybe he got lost, disoriented, fell in, top froze over, end of the story.
Yeah.
Right? And they were like, okay, case closed. Sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Kubacki, your kid's dead. Case closed, right?
Yep.
Wrong, motherfuckers. 15 months later, 700 miles away from where he goes missing, Steve fucking Kubacki wakes up in a field wearing someone else's clothes. He has no memory of the missing time. What happened? I guess he wanders 40 miles or some shit at his dad's house. And his dad's like, holy shit, my dead son has returned to me. And Steve goes on to like get a degree, finishes his school, kind of just dismisses the whole thing, never wants to talk about it. And he is still, I think, has a doctorate now in psychology, maybe.
Yeah.
And the only comment that he said is, I have no issues, so why would I want to talk to anybody about it? You know?
Yeah.
But it was just a blip.
But
in
he's
his
the guy that
memory,
could
like-
fucking answer the question if he could answer. And I guess
Yeah.
Paulides has reached out to him and just got no reply. Because if you could get that dude to go like under hypnosis or something,
Yeah.
like you might be able to figure out how. Because how do you get 700 miles without remembering? How is he in somebody else's clothes? Like
How much time passed too? What'd you say? 15 months?
15 months.
Yeah. Over a
So-
year.
How do you lose that much of your memory too? Like,
Again, maybe something happened and he was trying to get water out of the lake and he fell in and drowned and then someone found him and pulled him out and then nursed him back to health, but he had no memory and then
got
dropped
brain
him off.
damage and forgets
But then
that.
how does he wake up in the middle of a field in Pittsfield or wherever the hell, which is nearby? So I bet the Kubakis live in Massachusetts.
oh, Pittsfield, Mass.
I think so, yeah. 700 miles
But
from
700
Lake
miles
Michigan.
is
Yeah.
700 miles is halfway from here to Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Except
a
it's
long
from
way.
Michigan to, yeah. So how did he get there in 15 months without any memory? Why did his memory come back in the middle of the field and like now all of a sudden he's conscious and remembering, but point A to point B, there's nothing, right?
Somebody could have been dosing it with Rufinol and just being
Wacky
"Here,
tobacco
come with
and then held
wacky
for 15
tobacco.
months, right?
us." Yeah.
So they keep him on Rohypnol for 15 months in a black ops site somewhere. It's crazy, but this shit happens.
Yeah.
So he started off in the national parks, and he's accumulating all these case files. Then he starts turning on to city stuff, right? So he's shown these clusters. He shows the commonalities of the case, mostly unexplainable. You could say this explains this, but it doesn't explain these other three things. Something's going on. He doesn't know what. He keeps digging. So he starts looking into, and this is, I think, his most recent book, I think it's Sobering Coincidence, where he starts looking to missing persons cases in cities. And this gets, I don't have this case here, but this is worth looking into because someone ended up going missing in the past 2-3 years in Boston that fits this profile.
Wow.
Now this leans more towards the possible serial killer-ish, weird government experimentation, who knows what. But there are a lot of commonalities between like college-aged, very smart, athletic male individuals. They'll be out at night drinking at a bar. No one will see them leave. But they've gone missing, and then they're found days later in a body of water. But the coroner, even though they might say that they drowned, their body doesn't reflect like it's been in the water for the amount of time. You know, coroners have all kinds of signs that they can look to. I think like lividity is one of the things where it's the gathering of blood at the lowest area of your body after you die because your blood isn't circulating. So you start to get these marks. After a certain amount of... Go ahead.
Sorry, are these the same disappearances that are happening like around Quincy Market and stuff, that area of Boston? Because weren't there a bunch of women also disappearing from clubs in that area? And
I don't know
as well
that.
as men? Yeah,
The one
I
I'm
remember
thinking
hearing
of...
about this.
The one I'm thinking of, and I can't remember the guy's name. I should have looked it up.
Is it
But
Alex
I've heard
Barron, that story?
he was at I think he was at a hockey game, maybe a sports game. Might have been the Bruins. He was at some game. He went out with he was up early for work. He called his fiance and was like, "Hey, I want to go to a game with my buddy. He got tickets." She's like, "Go have fun." He goes with the buddy. It's getting late. He had a couple drinks. He's like, "I'm tired. I gotta go home." Calls his girl. He's like, "Hey, I'm ready to head out." She's like, "Cool, I'll come get you. Where are you?" Because she lived nearby. And he's like, "Hey, what street are we at?" And then someone yells the street name. And then he says it to her. And she's like, "Okay, I'm only a couple minutes away." She never finds him. He goes missing. I think maybe the phone gets found and it's smashed. He shows up in the nearby body of water days later, and the coroner rules it a drowning, but his parents are like, "Fuck it, my kid didn't drown." You know, he's like an Olympic swimmer. You know, like it's always that shit. And then they hire an independent coroner, right? Because the story that they got from the city is local report for local consumption, and the coroner that the family hires is like, I might be conflating two stories at some point, but these are all common things. The coroner that the family hires tells a different story about what happened, and like this kid has been missing for these days. Somebody had him. Somebody held his body and then dumped it because his body shows signs of being in the river for 2 days and he's been gone for 2 weeks, whatever it is. You know, and then this ends up being a very, very common thing through multiple cities. I think Boston is one of his clusters, that these cases keep happening. And then one of the other ones that I looked up for this is this dude, Jonathan Miles Robinson. This was December 21st, 2009. He's in this place called Wengen, Switzerland. It's a small town, no cars. The only way in there is railway, or I think maybe like tram. So it's like this mountain town specifically for skiing. It's a destination resort, but it's like a destination. It's not a city as we know it. So he's out with friends, drinking till 2 a.m. There's cameras all over the place. At 2:20, he walks this lady friend back to a hotel. At 2:50, he leaves, and he's like 200 yards, her hotel from his hotel. He disappears. So the Swiss begin looking the next day. Dogs can't find a scent. There's no trace for this guy, and there's no reason for a successful young guy to leave, right, and just disappear. So they call off the search formally because of the holiday, Boxing Day or whatever, right near Christmas. But his mom is like a member of the ski association for the area. They've been going there to ski for 15 years. She's got a bunch of friends, super small town. Everyone's walking. Everybody knows each other. So she starts going door to door, essentially. She recruits more than 70 friends and villagers, and they have maps and notebooks, and they start knocking on the doors. Have you seen this kid? And they find him shortly after at the bottom of this cliff in a place called Lauterbrunnen that was inaccessible when he disappeared. So again, like the weather that Mitch brought up, there's weird weather events that happen. So he goes missing. There's maybe like extra snow or whatever the next day. The only way you could have gotten from where he went missing to the place he was found would be by helicopter, and there was not conducive conditions to flying a helicopter in that time span, right? unless you're doing it in daylight, in which case someone's going to go, oh, there's a helicopter. His cell phone stopped transmitting at 5 a.m. the morning he disappeared. At 3:26 that morning, a message was sent from his phone to the first name in his contact list. But unused, like, just a ping, I guess.
Yeah.
So the phone was trying to make contact, and I guess that happens a lot. There are these weird, anomalous things in the missing cases in the woods, in addition to the missing cases in the city, is everybody has cell phones now. And then there's a case of, like, a lot of times the cell phones will start going wacky tobacky when this shit happens. So either you'll get these weird responses if they do manage to pull the cell phone data, and you see, like, there are a couple cases where the cell phone pings at like 3 different towers, all within way too far for a human being to travel. Right? All of a sudden the data is either scrambled or the dude is at elevation rocketing in a plane or some shit. That's the only way that the cell phone will work out. There are cases where dudes have, like, made a call and then you hear wind. I sent you guys that news clip from the dude's cell phone, like one of the dudes that went missing in, like, a strange cases where you hear those wild animal noises and the guy's screaming.
Yeah.
And then it just cuts off.
It is very spooky.
It happens a lot. Like, people will hear and they'll be like, hello, and you'll just hear, like, wind.
Sketchy.
Yeah, this wild shit happening. He's still looking into it. And, like, his advice is, if you go out in the woods, don't go alone. Have a friend with you. Bring a personal locator beacon at all times, and if you can, a gun, because he said that there has been no cases he's found where a person has had both and gone missing. But in that movie that's on Amazon Prime now, Missing 411: The Hunted, that goes like focuses on cases that he's found of, like, experienced outdoorsmen.
Yep.
So it's one thing if a 6-year-old goes missing in the woods and doesn't turn up. It's another thing when someone who's hunted those woods since they were 6 or 7 with their family and grew up there, when those people go missing and they had a gun with them and they had a dog with them, like, things start to get a little bit more
Suspect.
mysterious.
Yeah.
That's it, man. It's just a scratch on the surface. But I think that this is the wildest story that I have heard that isn't immediately just pointed at as a ghost story or a UFO or a Bigfoot. Like, these people 100% have gone missing.
Yep.
These are cases that are still not satisfactorily solved. There are cases where at the least there's gross negligence on behalf of the people that you're relying on to do the right thing. At the most, there is an active cover-up for these things. You can point at so many different options as to why and how these things are happening. Every one is more interesting than the last. You know, like, why are they taking these kids? What are they doing to them while they're gone? Like, they don't show any signs that I know of, like, missing organs, so they're not selling them. But, like, what would you do if you're picking a kid off the street, like a 20-year-old athlete from Brown University or something, and what are you doing to him for 2 weeks before you dump his body? Like, what's the point of holding him? And, like, what is happening to him if he's not showing signs of it, right? Because maybe he's tortured for 2 weeks, but you're not, like, putting him in a saw situation. So it's like, what is going on?
I thought you were gonna say putting them
How
in
do you make a That's us. How do you make a 57-year-old career mountain climber disappear off the side of a rock with no trace? Like, how do you even pull that off?
sketchy.
Even if you had, like, the best technology we can imagine right now, how do you get that done?
Yeah.
With
this stuff-
a group of people too.
Yeah.
Those people don't know where he went either. That's
Straight up, Spider-Man is the only thing that could have made that happen. But
scurried off the
anybody
side.
on the bottom would have seen Spider-Man going across this giant, like, Rainier's this huge flat. If anyone's looking, you're gonna see something crazy going across.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you do it? How does the guy not scream if he did see something nuts?
Yeah.
You know? Or is there a false panel on the mountain that they just opened, snatched them, and closed?
Secret
Yeah.
base hidden within the cliffside.
Well, that is something in conspiracy
Yeah.
theories that gets bandied about a lot.
That is
there are
one
a
of the
lot
many theories that people have had.
At
about
the
this stuff.
bare minimum, there are definitely cavernous holes in the earth, a lot of which are around the
Clusters.
state parks
Yeah.
that kind of correlate with the clusters.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of places like you slip and fall in like a slight cave-in, then you're gone for good. You know? And then just that pile of rubble still looks like a pile of rubble. It's just you're underneath it.
Yeah, like sinkholes.
But
Sinkholes
that
open
can't
in the city.
explain everything. And the fact that there would be like perfect sinkholes, you know, because they look for the people after. And if you started like your ankle started sinking in, you'd be like, oh, maybe they went down here. But that hasn't been successfully answered yet. But that's it, baby. Look up canammissing.com, Missing 411. You can watch that documentary on Amazon Prime right now. I highly recommend that one.
There's also a whole subreddit dedicated
yeah.
to Missing 411, which I was just peeping through, and there's a lot of...
Yeah, you can go deep. My
This
intention is to wet your whistle.
Yeah. This is one of those things that once you start going down the rabbit hole with this, there's no way to climb back up.
Yeah, it's never ending.
Yeah. And
It's all based on truth. These are
Yeah,
all
that's-
real, like some of the saddest
people.
days for some people's lives.
yeah,
You know, and that's what I was
like
saying
the
at the beginning.
scariest
Like,
thing in a way is that like these stories are true, right? Every detail about them has been meticulously collected by multiple sources, meticulously documented through the form of freedom of information requests, case files, interviews, testimonials. These are true stories that have happened, and there's no way to explain them. And if that doesn't freak you out, then, like, I don't know, I guess you need to do a little bit more existential thinking in life or something.
Wow. Yeah, that's terrifying.
so that's
crazy
it,
shit.
boys. You want to go in the woods with me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually. How do you guys feel about going and trying to search for some of these missing people? We should start our own party. We could take
I
the
wanna try to get
podcast
taken.
on the road. Oh, you
Yeah,
want
I'm
me
gonna
It'd
change
be
my
like-
middle name to Liam Neeson and try to get taken.
No. Then you have to come get it. One of us has to get. If you're Liam Neeson, you have to come get us.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Also-
no,
Liam-
I,
Liam Neeson
I am
doesn't get nabbed.
I am simultaneously going to change my name to Liam Neeson, but I also want to be taken, and that's my individual right to want that.
And
Oh
then
yeah,
the
sure.
three of
You
us
could
have
do
to
that. I'm
search
just
for it.
saying that you're not. None of us will be able to get you.
That's fine. I'm not. I don't want to come back.
Oh, that ruins it.
I'm
The
gonna
point
search
would
for
be
John.
Liam Neeson needs to come get you, and then you could solve the
Yeah.
mystery.
Well, he's.
But you're just saying that
I
you're
don't
going to
want him to
disappear.
help.
No one's even going to look for you now that you just said you want to disappear. You're not
Honestly-
you're not in the case file.
I honestly am so fine with that because the most frustrating thing to me about this is like it's unresolved, and that like it frustrates me in the moment. It's not something that I will. I mean, I'll watch the documentary and stuff, and I'll think of it. I subscribe to the subreddit, so I'll see things pop up every once in a while now. But this is like, I have so many questions, but there are no answers.
Yeah.
But Liam
You know?
Neeson, you could find the answers. That's what we're trying to say.
All right,
You, Liam
drop the
Neeson.
Liam
Set of
Neeson
skills.
thing. I'm over the Liam Neeson thing.
That was
Shouldn't
your
have even said it.
idea. That was your
I shouldn't
idea.
have said it. I have regrets. I have regrets in life, and that's one of them. Bringing up
No
Liam Neeson.
regrets.
But if he goes missing, we have to find him.
Well, thanks for giving me nightmares tonight.
No, don't be scared. Be excited.
A loved one
Yeah.
going missing.
Be
I
excited.
spent a lot of time alone in the woods. It's kind of creepy to think about.
Yeah, I've done it too. I've been into this stuff for years, and I still go camping. It's all good.
Well, you literally live in the woods, don't you? Up in New Hampshire?
I mean, I'm in a valley, but yeah, I'm surrounded
Oh,
by
okay,
woods
yeah.
for the most
Yeah,
part.
You got enough woods in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
It could happen.
Heck
Did you
yeah.
find any stories in New Hampshire of that could be connected to Missing 411?
So there's not a nearby cluster. There are a handful of cases in the White Mountains, but that's still like 90 minutes northeast of me. But my buddy Jay was just up there yesterday, solo hiking. Against the rules. I have not talked to him today. I did get a message when he was off the mountain. 'Cause
Okay, so he's good.
do
He's not
yeah. So, but that's good. So even if you are going hiking, there's a case. I have a buddy Jay that I go hiking regularly with. If we go alone, at the very least, I will text and send like a geo pin to my wife or my friend just to let them know, hey, this is
Smart.
where I'm going. If you don't hear from me in X amount of time, you can have my CDs.
Now, do you bring a firearm with you when you go? into the woods?
No,
Or
not
you're just
usually.
like-
I when I first was certified in firearm handling, I used to bring it with me more often. But these days, I don't give a shit. Cause like,
Yeah.
if I'm going out with a knife,
Hell yeah.
like a real idiot.
Are you like me, where you try to find the biggest stick in the woods before you go out into the woods? And
No,
just-
but I have hiking poles. I think that's a good idea. Having I think a poker is highly underestimated in our modern lives. I think the idea of a spear is one of the smartest things that humans ever created, and I don't think we utilize it enough. I don't think we appreciate it.
Yeah.
'Cause if you're out in the woods and something's coming at you, you got a big old poker. Even if it's like a deer and they're getting angry, that's like a social distance enforcement.
Yeah.
Distance.
Angry deer.
I would walk around in public with a spear if I could.
Dude, everything
can.
in the woods will fuck you up.
You can.
Everything
Yeah.
will fuck you up.
Look at poison ivy. Deer ticks. Deer ticks will
Yeah.
fuck you up.
Well,
Yeah, I don't
it's hard to
trust
fight a deer tick with a spear, but if you can, you've achieved next level greatness.
Yeah. That'd be an
You have
impressive
that
feat.
kind of accuracy. Yeah. Taking out deer ticks with a spear. Wow. That
Safety
was-
first.
Yeah, that was a good topic today. I'm glad you guys brought that to the table because I went into this knowing absolutely nothing about it. I mean, you guys mentioned it on the last episode, but I had no idea what missing 411 was.
Now you know, learn
Now
it.
I'm
There's 4 books
gonna
worth
deep
of
dive into
cases
this.
you could look
Yeah,
into.
lots to learn about it. A lot of research to be done. Lots of things to watch.
Just
if
on
you
the
find
front
it
page of
interesting.
The subreddit alone is a ton of. I'm looking at a ton of different headlines that I'm already like, ooh, I can't wait to.
And that's another interesting thing to me is this is so untapped. There's just this one author writing about it, and it's like, who knows what different people have potential explanations or information that they could come forward with. They just aren't aware. You know?
Now, this David Paulides.
Paulides.
Is that his last name? He's still active, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
he's still doing this. He's still writing books.
Yep.
So canammissing.com is his website. He's been putting out like every few weeks a YouTube video where he'll give updates on like trail safety or any cases that are current that he's looking into. There was 2 cases from I think Washington area of 2 foreign-born young 20-something-year-old males that went missing within a couple days of each other at the same park. So if stuff kind of pops up, and that because now that this is getting bigger, so now like you guys are aware of it. If anyone else listens to this, they might be aware of it. So now those are more eyes that if you have the slightest amount of interest and some case pops up or some anomaly pops up, you'd be more likely to share it, and then that opens the net in order to aggregate more information that can hopefully start pointing to answers someday. You know, it's like I hope this is something that I hope evolves, and before I die, there's maybe way more insight than there is right now. And I think that
Yeah, and maybe we could even get David on the show sometime. Maybe we could pipe
Sure.
him in a future episode and talk to him. I bet he'd be willing to at least talk about promote his book, maybe. You know, I'm looking at him. He has amazing facial hair.
Oh yeah, his mustache is quite legendary.
Wow.
I mean, it's not.
He is.
It's not like a Kurt Russell mustache, but it's close.
No, but he's got like that Seagal eyebrows with like the Kurt Russell face. He's a very
furrowed, like you've been
Yeah.
taking a lot of statements.
Yeah. He looks like a detective.
He really does. He has a detective's mustache.
He has to do rehab for furrowed eyebrows. He has to do detective extraordinary. And Columbo.
Yeah, we should look into maybe. I wonder if we could contact him and see if we could get him on a future episode. Wow, that's cool. I'm gonna have to read his book now too.
Yeah, dude, it's
Yeah.
wild. The documentary free, Amazon Prime. Check it out. Like, that's the most interesting one. I think that one of the sounds that I use in the intro for the show was from the guy who's in that documentary's Bigfoot recordings.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Nice little Easter egg.
Hell yeah.
Excellent.
All right. Stay safe out there, boys. I love you and I miss you.
Yeah, no hiking without each other. Please bring a buddy.
You go along. Just let us know when you're going to go.
Yeah.
Buy
just
everyone.
don't-
Buy everyone beacons.
Yeah.
Yes,
Personal
we should
beacons.
each have a GPS.
Yeah, custom, like, show beacons.
Yeah, exactly. That's the first thing that we buy with all the show money that we're gonna rake
Yeah.
in our personal locator beacons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Perfect.
think it's important. Well,
me
can
too.
we get them shaped like Bigfoot feet?
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Big
I do
old feet.
too.
The antenna is the big toe. Start working on it.
Yeah, into it.
See y'all soon.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.